Good morning, afternoon, evening, or night to anyone who is hopping on to join us today. Let me get the music started. Welcome to Create Your Own Forest, a place to create art of all sorts and shapes and kinds. We are back today for the next 20 minutes working on Poppy Night, as I have lovingly dubbed this piece. And it's up to me to remember what brush size I was working with before. I know I've never really discussed brush size today, but we are again continuing on this pre-line art in between sketch using this brush, which is, I don't actually know what this brush is. I'm gonna be totally honest with you. It's a basic 5 size digital ink sketch, so it is definitely a sketch brush. I use the basic 5 size opacity, so I use these two brushes mainly for sketching, line art, and also for the actual coloring itself. But we are continuing our journey here today with Poppy Night. Been a little bit of a break, tiny one since last time. Been super busy at work, got caught up playing D&D and also drawing D&D things. Maybe the next piece that I do on here will be Dungeons and Dragons, just because honestly that's one of the biggest things that I do is play Dungeons and Dragons. Might be kind of lame, but at the same time, I enjoy it. You might notice that, unlike in the other video, in the episode or chapter 2 Poppy Night, I did have a camera on. I do not have a camera today. That is mostly because the background behind me looks kind of like Garbo. So we're just not dealing with it today, so my camera's off today. If I can clean up the background or get find out kind of like how I can green screen with OBS, maybe I'll put my face back up. But for now, I'll keep it off. So we're going on to Poppy Night's greaves and any underclothes. Not really underwear, but definitely underclothes. I gotta pull up my art planning chat that I have on Discord. Take a look at what clothing Poppy Night has underneath. It does just look like this is like a little bit of a thicker cloth, maybe more burlappy. I imagine that a lot of pressure on the clothing is gonna come from around the knee area, so I'll kind of sketch that in. But in general, the knee would be cocked out to the side there. And then transitioning into the boot down at the bottom. I don't have a very good, drawing for how the boot should look, but I do have some idea for, how I can make it look decent, like the boot is covered without taking too much away from. It's not really realism at this point because I'm not going for super realistic armor, but just something to make it not look like super foolish. I would say I, as an artist, feel pretty not confident with shoes or boots in general, so probably what I draw here today will be pretty simplistic. From what I know, the boots armor that are typically worn, I just realized the knee should be cocked a little bit more out to the side. The angle of this boot should probably be a little bit more to the side here. And but I have noticed that typically, because you still want to retain that movability, you want to retain that mobility, the boots are split into sections, so I don't know, typically maybe 3 sections. So you got the front, middle, back, and then on that you have this piece which sits in front of the ankle, so that you can kind of have this break here, retain that mobility, and we'll put a little fastener right there, even if it's not entirely correct. As long as it looks cool, to be honest, nobody's really gonna care. We're going for style vibes right now. We're not going for, this should be a little bit more triangular. I kind of lost that when I redrew it. We're going for style points. This guy's aura farming. We're not going for realism. Definitely low fantasy. Similar to what I said, as being like Dark Souls based. Yeah. But Poppy Knight himself, I was showing the sketch to a few other people, and my boyfriend agreed that it kind of was giving if you've ever been really on TikTok or just, seen memes in general, there are some memes that talk about like, this is where like that I'd like to die at this place, and it's usually some like I'd like to bleed to death in this place, and that's it. It sounds a little morbid, but then you realize it's usually like a gorgeous spot. So it's like a snow-covered mountain looking out upon a gorgeous valley, and you're like, oh, I'd love to bleed out here. It's just like a very poetic. It's basically a guy's way of saying, oh, this is a very poetic thing to look at, or a very poetic scene is what it's giving. And honestly, that's kind of what I was going for. I was kind of just going for a guy who was resting at the end of a long day. Honestly, I might need to resize Poppy Knight or move him up, because his foot is getting cut off here. I don't know if it makes sense to like bring the foot up here. That's something I might do. Let me save as Night Poppy 1, so just in case I mess up or don't like what this does, I can always change it. I can always go back or undo. Typically, I used to be like a very prolific saver. It was to the point where I think for my really in-depth pieces, I would have like 36. I think I got up to like 36 different saves, and the piece was so in-depth, each save was like half a gigabyte. Maybe not that large, but very, very large. Can't really recommend using that much of your computer, because that means that every time you go to modify it, your computer is going to have to use crazy amounts of RAM just to be able to modify a very basic part of the drawing. So I don't know if I can make this larger. This probably should be bigger out here. And then we can angle it. So I know they just erased a whole bunch there, but this would appear a little bit thinner if seen from the top, and then the foot would be wider than this one, because we're looking at it right from the top. He's got his knee angled up, so that means that this entire section should be probably a little bit more off to the side here, even more so than it already is. And then that should go out like this, because you definitely want the knee to look more like it's coming at you. That was my plan anyway. I'm not really liking how this looks, so with that, I am gonna save it, but I'm going to reopen just popping. Actually, can I undo? And my little saving thing backfired. So what I am gonna do is I am gonna go back and like retrace what I was doing. I did notice that I am using a different color than I was originally. That is because I have done quite a bit of drawing since then, and the last color I must have used on Krita must have saved. But yes, I use, as for the art software specifically, I do use Krita. It is an open source free software for artists. You can use it for animations too. I've never been good at trying to get the animation kind of style thing to work, so I've never really experimented with it that much, but I've seen people make some pretty incredible things. So yeah, that's where we're netting out here. And then similar to this foot, except a little bit wider, seen from the top. I don't know if I really want it to extend like off screen, but we'll leave it that way for now. I can always move his actual body, and we'll work a little bit on the sword. So we have the cross guard here with these like little downturn bits. There's not really a rhyme or reason for why I designed the sword like this. In the reference photo, the sword isn't like this either, or isn't too similar. I just kind of decided this is how I wanted the cross guard to be, even if, you know, it didn't actually make sense from a sword standpoint. But as for just the genre of fantasy in general, I know I hop around a lot when I talk. I don't really go into this with a plan or a rhyme or reason, although I definitely probably should. It might help, you know, make some coherent bit out of this, but that's, again, not my true goal here. There's not really a rhyme or reason for why I designed the sword like this. I did want something a little bit more basic. I could have gone with like a crazy sword, but I didn't want to distract from the attention of how detailed Poppy Knight is. And his hands, I'm very proud of those hands. I know I worked a lot on them last time. I'm going to plan on probably either putting a poppy or either a poppy in his hands or just like a completely different flower. So either so he blends in a little bit more with the background, or so he completely stands out. I've yet to figure out exactly what I wanted to do there, but I know I still have a little bit of time to figure that out. So as we're rounding out the end of this sort of in-between sketchy, one of the things that I don't really do is proper line art for the backgrounds. I could definitely see how that would become a detriment, or it could become a detriment. But I really haven't trying to figure out where exactly to move him. Could be a detriment. I think I'm not really experienced enough with backgrounds to know what I want out of them. I love the idea of being able to do backgrounds, but I've not found a technique or method that's really stuck with me or stood out to me. So for now, I'll roll with it, and if I hate it, I'll learn from it, and I'll do better line art for the background in the future. So I'm thinking Poppy Knight needs to be moved up so we can fit his entire foot in. I don't really like the idea of him only partially hanging off screen. I think it's better to me if he's fully in screen, and maybe rotate it a little bit, as best as I can make him. Or I can fully, you know, cut off. I don't want to cut him off like at an ankle, because that I don't like the idea of that. So maybe something like that, but I do want to be careful to move the sword as well. I like the idea of like the pinky toe being at the edge of the page. I feel like this should be moved down to back to where it was. But Poppy Knight himself, I wanted a little bit more, like, originally I wanted him more centered, and I honestly still will, but I do want the entire form on the screen to be fully visible. That leaves about the same space for his head and his foot away from the edge there. So we'll take the sword and move it. I almost feel like it's a little empty on this side, so maybe I could do some sort of shield. That's something I didn't do in the base sketch, so that's something I can sketch in here. But there are smaller shields. What's the proper word for them? Shields. Of course, I Google smaller shield, and the first thing that pops up is Minecraft texture pack. What I want is like a small medieval shield. What's the name for them? There's a buckler. So while this guy might not have something huge, he does have a buckler, something that does come into play or would come in handy. It's going to be more ovally so that you can kind of get the background, but just completely discarding the full thing. So yes, this will be either a wooden buckler or a metal buckler. Both are pretty similar in size. It looks like a metal buckler would have like this larger bit here, so maybe it'll be metal. This will give me a really good chance to render metal, because I feel like that is another thing I could work on. So bucklers usually have like this, or at least the one I'm looking at has like this spot for rivets around the center, and then this patterning around the outside. But you usually think of shields as like this large big shield to defend you, but I know that having a smaller buckler would actually come in handy like a lot more often, because at the end of the day you do need to, or I would figure that you need to retain as much mobility as you can when it comes to fighting, when it comes to using weapons like this. So we'll add that buckler in, so Poppy Knight is more defended. And I think with this we have, we'll definitely round out the full pre-sketch before the end of the episode today, and maybe start on the line art. Ooh, that's fun. I'm not sure how long this total piece is gonna take. I've said in the previous videos that I do want to take my time and do it justice, because that's the only way you're gonna learn, is by devoting a lot of your time to learning what you like and what you don't like. I've honestly been drawing ever since I could remember, but at the end of the day, I've never really sat down to think about what I like or what I don't like. And I do feel like that's a detriment to my craft. It's only like the last year or so that I've sat down and decided, hey, this is what I want to do, or this is what I like, rather than just kind of pining after an art style. I know that a lot of people do kind of gun for an art style, but at the end of the day, you're going to drift toward what kind of, I feel like your body knows that you can draw. Whether or not it's something you like, you can definitely change your art style over time, but I do feel like your how you were raised or what art you do changes your art style so drastically. it takes a while to figure out what you like or what you're good at. I think with that we've rounded out our pre-sketch here. So let me rename the layers. So this would be sketch. This would be pre-line art. Forgive me if I spell things wrong. And I will make the layer for line art, but we'll get started with the line art next time. Maybe you'll see my face, maybe you won't, but we have given Poppy Knight a buckler, a fun buckler to go along with their sword. Their sword, which can be wielded one-handed or two-handed, which is helpful for reasoning for why this guy might have a buckler. I do have to make sure that I keep in all the layering, because layers are cool. Everybody knows that having massive amounts of layers is cool. And with that, I'm going to sign off for the night. I had a long day at work today. I hope everyone has the loveliest of evenings. And if I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening,